Suzanne, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Will.
You know, as I was getting ready for this conversation, I looked back and realized that we've actually had a couple conversations in pretty quick succession from the 21 convention. Then you had me on your podcast. So I'm excited to have you to continue the conversation on my podcast today.
Me too. Me too. Love talking to you.
So I think where I'd like to start is one of the things that I get out of your work is you talk a lot about how women can take care of men's needs. And, I don't really think much about my needs. I just kind of have them. So when I read some of your writing about how women can take care of men's needs, what men want, I actually learn a lot about myself. And so I'm actually curious how you started asking these questions, how you got into this field at all. There aren't many of you. Let's put it that way.
No, I know. It definitely evolved. It evolved. I didn't set out to do this specifically. When I guess it developed mainly since I wrote the book, The Alpha Female's Guide to Men and Marriage, which is subtitled How Love Works. And it was, I wrote that it came out in 2017. And it was a memoir, part self-help, going through my own dealings with my husband and communication and where I was falling short, where maybe he was, but I wasn't focused on him. The whole point of the book was about staying focused on me and things that I learned growing up that I didn't want to repeat. And through that process of writing that book, and then subsequently started coaching several years ago, which is basically taking the content of the book and helping people one-on-one put the material to action, is what it really is. I got a real window into not just my own world and what I saw growing up and what I was doing in my own marriage, but in the struggles that other people are having. And it just became really crystal clear that there's a definite theme of, I guess, what I would call like a modern struggle with women who have been taught to be too much in their masculine, right? In their core masculine, aggressive, go out and get what you're due, all that political stuff. And they're bringing it into their relationships and not understanding that it doesn't belong there. And then men taking a step back, thinking they're supposed to let women shine and equalize everything. And so being masculine is bad. And then seeing the result of that take place, which was just a much more extreme version of anything I experienced personally in my own marriage, but I did see growing up with my parents. So it's personal for me. And no doubt because of that, I've really honed in on figuring that dance out and what it is, what's the missing information, sort of the light bulb moment that people can have about what men need. And seeing how simple it is and understanding that the antagonism that they've been encouraged to have over these years is hurting their own relationships, and that the power is really within them. But in order to access that feminine power, they have to reject pretty much everything they've been taught since day one, right? From both the culture and then for many of them from their own parents. And that's a tall order. I mean, it's we're not talking overnight stuff at all. It's huge. It's just a whole different way of moving through the world. But when they get a taste of it and they actually are successful in it, everything turns around. It just looks completely different when you let go of those narratives that you've been groomed to harbor. Oh, sorry. So then you asked about men. My focus has been on women. And in seeing and hearing from the men, I realized that well, that's where you all come in. I feel like men have always needed men to guide them and women need women. That's always been my position, but I've ended up working with men who are very welcoming of a woman's voice saying the same types of things that a male coach might tell them, because it's so unusual, I guess, to hear it from a woman. And that window into that, into the male mind, I guess you'd say, has sort of allowed me to really listen and hear, and then try to sort of transfer that to women and say, hey, here's what's really going on. Here's how you can do better, to get the best out of him and to nurture the relationship so that you can ultimately get what you want as well, rather than suffering through feeling stuck and suffering through this upside down relationship, really, where the roles are just so topsy turvy that people don't know what the hell's going on, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long
Yeah.
answer to the question, but
No, that's a great answer. I think as a man who's coached men and myself been coached, I think the topic of what men need from women, I don't think it comes up quite in that way. You and I first connected over, we had big fans of Alison Armstrong, who was on my podcast, and her book, The Queen's Code, which is similarly in the vein of how women can relate to men. And men don't really, from a coaching perspective, talk about that. I mean, aside from some basics, like it's okay to want sex, something like that, or it's okay to want to be taken care of, or it's the need to cultivate more emotional availability, let's say. But in terms of what men actually need from women, we don't have those conversations. And my sense of the reason why is it's probably twofold. One, because I think on some level men take it for granted that it's just obvious. But I think on another level, it's that men have become accustomed to not getting it. That we've just become comfortable with the idea of like, well, the notion of being able to put any kind of demand on your wife or partner for what you might need is just not something that you can ever ask for. Like, don't even try. Or like you have to go on this big, nice dinner and set up the whole thing to just ask for something really basic. Like, hey, like, can you be, I want to say nicer, but can you be more affectionate? That's what I was going for. It's like the amount of work. Go ahead.
It's just so frustrating for both people, because you're right. The men aren't just stating it outright, and they should. But women, like, one of the things I try to teach women is that you have to read the cues from men. You have to look at the behavior and the actions, because it's not going to come at you verbally. And you can't really make a man as verbal as you are. Women are designed, they're more emotional, they're more verbal. They see nuance, they see things going on in relationships that a man, it just kind of will go over their head. And it's not a superior inferior thing. It's just two different ways of looking at things, because there's a lot of things that men are able to do that women need, in my opinion, to learn from, like the ability to focus. What's good about being linear, and you're really honed in on getting something done. So it goes both ways, but they're not generally going to be as verbal, although it'd be lovely if they were, and it's good to teach men to be more vocal that way. But it's hard for them. And rather than be mad about it, there could be another way of looking at it, and that is to look at the behavior. Really pay attention to when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're frustrated, when they smile, and put that in your notebook, your little mental notebook of like, what is happening there, or asking. You could ask straight out how they're feeling and kind of pull it out of them. But yeah, just two totally different languages, right?
Can I offer something? So I think that I'll speak for myself. So I am a bit more verbal, which is why I host a podcast. And I can say that I don't have a problem speaking up about my inner life. I've done a lot of inner self work, a lot of transformational stuff. So that's been a big part of it. I think that beyond the lack of men being verbal, there's also a fear of the word no. Like, what if I were to ask my partner, please be more affectionate? And she'd be like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Or hearing the word or some form of rejection. Like, men don't ask each other for things unless it's pretty urgent. We are in our relationships with each other. We try to be very self-sufficient, try not to put a burden on anybody else. That's the ideal, is, you don't borrow someone's ego to answer a question that you can answer for yourself. So if you really want to ask for something significant of another man, like that can be a thing depending on the relationship. So just getting to that point of speaking up for a need, but then the risk of our partner saying, no, I can't give that to you, is like, that would be crushing. And so it's almost like the incentive is to not even ask or to not even acknowledge the need for it, for myself in some cases anyway.
Which is interesting, because if you don't say anything and you're not getting it, it's no either way. So it's like, it's almost like you might as well try and see if it's, because that's an interesting point. I wonder how many women would flat out say no if men articulated exactly what they want or need.
Or would question the need in some way. It's like, or it's like, so a man would take the bold, risky step for a man for asking for what he needs, And the response that would come back would be anything other than, yes, I didn't know you needed that. The response would be, why do you need that? Or I can't do, like, not straight up no, but like some sort
Yeah.
of questioning. He's taken the
Questioning.
risk to express it. And the
Right.
woman's like, why do you
Right.
need that? It's like, I can't even tell you why I need it, but I know I need it. It's like, this isn't meant to be an argument over
Yeah.
the thing that I need. I'm asking. And so it's like, then you get the no either way, but like the confirmed no is worse, because then you know who you're with, right?
When you first said the word no, I thought you were going to refer to how much, because I didn't think about it from that end, but that's true. I was thinking about how important it is for men to know how to say no to their woman.
Yes. Oh, that too.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going in first. But that's interesting what you just said. Yeah. So, okay, sorry, off course there.
No, take us. There are no rules in the Renaissance of Men podcast. Take us off road.
I feel so badly for men because, I feel like they are caught between their natural desire, which is to, for lack of a better word, serve their woman. So if they love them, they want to give them what they want. They want to see them happy. They're naturally inclined to do that. And they'll do anything for your happiness too. They'll do anything for a smile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a laugh.
Yeah.
And because that means they're doing something right? If you're happy and you're laughing, that means I'm good and I'm doing it for you, you know? And they're torn between that, which is wanting to give their wife/woman what they want, and a genuine need to have boundaries, I guess, to say, no, we can't do that, or I can't give you that, or whatever. And I think 9 out of 10 times men are going to err on the just giving in, the human nature of wanting to please them, rather than say no, which is totally detrimental to the relationship and very detrimental to him, because over time he's going to resent his own choice to do that because his need is he's not following what he wants to do.
That's right. That's right. It does feel like a trap. It does feel like that, and this is something that we do talk about in the men's space. You know, the need to set boundaries or set a container or say no. And I was listening to a pastor, Doug Wilson, like, you know, your wife, your woman is a human being. She doesn't want to win all the time. Not everyone wants to win all the time. Like, you have to say no. And I heard that, I said, yes, that's absolutely true. And my concern as a man would be if I say no, that builds up resentment. Because like resentment can always come out sideways later. And I guess I would ask you that question.
You mean resentment on her part?
On her part of me, that if I say no, that somewhere in the back, there's a little tank filling up full of resentment. And at some point that resentment is going to come out at me sideways. Is that a thing? Because that's my male fear, that if, not that I say no to some tyrannical degree, but that if I put appropriate boundaries down, am I going to get an attack coming at me sideways when I'm least expected?
So that's really interesting, especially if that's the reason why men are hesitant to do that. Because from my experience, it's the complete opposite. Instead of chalking up bits of resentment, she's chalking up bits of respect for you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good to know.
It may not look like it in the moment, and she may balk, you know, and back, and you have to be able to take that. You know, you have to be able to handle that. So this depends on the woman, of course.
Sure.
But the more difficult she's making that, the more difficult she's making it for you to say no after you've said it on a consistent basis, I would say the more you know that you're dealing with a potentially emotionally unstable woman who really doesn't want a relationship, because one who does will respond to that differently. They will respect you. And they will want you to stand your ground. And I think a lot of women want to gets really tricky. This is my first time actually using this word publicly. Okay. But I'm thinking about using it in other ways. So I might as well just talk it out here. Before I use the word, because people are going to be like, what? I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example from a movie.
Okay.
There's one of my favorite movies is called Far from the Madding Crowd. I don't know if you've seen it, but please go watch it sometime soon after our conversation today. Okay, not the original, but the most recent with Carey Mulligan.
Far from the Madding Crowd. I'll add to the show notes.
Far from the Madding Crowd. I really want to hear from you after you've watched it. And you have to watch it more than once because there's a lot there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the main character, without giving too much away, the main character, who's played by Carey Mulligan, her name is Bathsheba.
Okay.
This is
provocative.
Set way back in the 1800s. 1700s, 1800s, I think. I don't know. And she's very strong-willed, very independent. Her parents died early on, so she just raised herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's basically a man, for all intents and purposes, but she's beautiful. And she meets 3 different men. So the arc of the story is her relationship with these 3 very different kinds of men. That's what I was trying to say. 3 very different kinds of men. And one of them, when she says hello, he wants to marry her right away. Back then, I guess you saw somebody you liked and you wanted to marry them. So she said she's never getting married because you wouldn't be able to tame me. Mm-hmm. That's the word I was going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want somebody who could.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair.
Okay. I think most, if not all, women like Bathsheba secretly want a man who can tame them. And the taming, depending on how you're going to be able to, depending on your view of the world and men and women, you're either going to, you'll either take offense to that word, like, what are women, cattle, or or you'll understand what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. It's not a lording over, it's a taming the wild spirit, because it can't stay in that wild state. It's got to coexist with others and be peaceful. Mm-hmm. And you need the strength of a strong man to be able to tame her. A woman like that, a woman like that.
Yes, okay. Not all women.
No, right. No, a woman like that. And I think that there are so many of those women in America today. And whereas if you went back 50 years ago, you wouldn't find as many of them. My mother was one, but she was unusual. She was born 1930, and she was not a product of her times. But if you plucked her into today's world, both my parents are gone, she would be one of a dime a dozen. Because the average woman today is very strong-willed and independent and doesn't let her guard down and all of that. So I don't know. I feel like my goal is to help men. I almost want to shift my attention away, or at least add the men on more than I do just the women, to help them understand what it is those women are really needing from them. Because their tendency is to step back when a woman rises up, right? Because you can't fight with her the way you can a man. And again, going back to that whole idea of wanting her to, wanting to give to her and have her be happy. So if you think, oh, she wants to be she wants to be the man, I'm going to step back and let her be, which is a no-win situation for relationships. It's going to fall flat eventually. I don't know how we got on that, but taming is what I was trying to talk about there. That
it's a powerful word.
It's a powerful word, and it's a powerful word, and it's a matter of understanding what that really looks like and what that can be like. Which is why I'm saying watch Far from the Madding Crowd, because if you watch it all the way to the end, you'll see what I mean.
Okay, no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers.
So I have a question about that then. So I think I find myself wondering. Okay, so that I agree that there are women who want and need that. But I wonder if Far from the Madding Crowd the movie is based on a book, and the book is by Thomas something or other, Thomas Wolfe or something like that. Not to be confused with Tom Wolfe, the American author, but Thomas Wolfe. Anyway, so the thing is, I wonder if the women of Bathsheba's age, era, meaning the 1800s, she had an expectation of being tamed, meaning like, I don't think you could tame me. And parenthetically, I expect to be tamed. But I think the women today who need to be tamed would absolutely resist any notion of being tamed, and that the men simply don't have enough within them to tame them and continue living their life.
Like I 100% agree. And I think that's where we are with it, which is why we're finding men stepping back and saying, I'm out.
Yeah.
for that very reason.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, okay, that's one road you can go. Just,
Yeah.
say, forget it. I'm not going to go there. But an alternative would be to attempt to do that. And I would argue that about half of the women, of course, there's absolutely nothing. This is just a guess. About half the women would actually respond well, and the other half wouldn't. And if they wouldn't respond well, you have to remove yourself, because at that point she's so far gone and she needs to stay in that space. She's never going to be. And I can tell this now, by the way, several years after doing the coaching. At first, I would try really hard to determine whether or not I thought this was fixable before working with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I found out the hard way that it can be hard to determine that up front. I'm much better at it now than I was when I started, because there's an aura there, there's words, there's things that you say that I can kind of tell whether you are really in or not. If you really want to change and you're ready to change. And by the way, I argue that everybody and anybody can change at any time.
Sure.
It's about getting your head around a whole new way of living and being in the world and in your relationship, and then putting the skills to action. But before you put the skills to action, you have to actually see and want a completely different life than the one you're living. You have to be so desperate to fix it that you're willing to have a different life with that person than to just get divorced or stay out and live alone or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I have to discern whether or not you're all in, I guess is a way of putting it.
You're talking to the women that you coach now. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's what you mean. That must, talk about being on the front lines. You know?
Yep. I've seen stuff. It's pretty, it's remarkable. I mean, it's, and you think, like I said, I'm better with it now, but they'll tell you what you want to hear. And sometimes they believe that they want to, but then you can see it's not registering, and they're in the blame mode and they cannot look in the mirror at all. And then I can't help you if you cannot look in the mirror. It's not going to work.
What I have so many questions. So I'm trying to just imagine the excruciating process it must take to get a woman to look into the mirror and see that, like, hey, some of this is on you. I don't care what the TV and the movies and the books and your mom and the music and it all says, girl boss. I don't care. I don't care. You got to look in the mirror, and like turning their head away from whatever. I can't even imagine. I've tried to do that in my personal life. It's like, it's almost impossible for you. Like in the coaching environment, it must be.
Well, the only difference would be that they're coming to me, right? And they're asking for help. And so they're looking for something. So then I have to explain, okay, I can help you, but here's what you're looking at. Is this what you're willing to do? And of course, if they have small children, they're much more yes, 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 right? Than if they're, I don't know, if they're becoming empty nesters, they want an excuse to check out. I had one woman, and I almost didn't take her on for this reason alone. She was an FBI agent.
There you go.
And just what she did a woman FBI agent alone, I actually asked her the numbers on that. I can't remember what they are, but the number of female FBI agents versus men, and it's just off the charts, right?
Sure.
It's so small. And I didn't want to judge her on that. I just thought, oh my God, an FBI agent. When you really think about what they do, how on earth would that person become a soft, feminine, conciliatory creature at home? Like, I just couldn't get my head around it. And I was right in the end. She was not able to do it at all. But because she wasn't able to, it's one thing to do that if have a regular job or just, I don't know, you're at a desk job or something, or even a teacher or something, I don't know, something that's just a little more run of the mill. But an FBI agent, you'd have to either, she wasn't going to give up her career, and I wasn't telling her to. It's just that the alternative means that what you're doing all day can't in any way, shape, or form be what you're doing at home. So you'd have to completely flip it off and, create this new set of skills for how to relate to a man at home with your children, which is not being an FBI agent, the things that you would need to do to be an FBI agent, the skills you would be employing there. Yeah.
So it sounds like that sounds like a really impossible problem where a woman is forced into a position of, like, it's one thing to confront her own programming about men and masculinity and femininity. Like, it's one thing for any human being in an environment to confront these mistaken beliefs. It's another thing when your career that you've sacrificed a lot for
Yep.
demands you surface 180-degree polar opposite characteristics. Like you can't shift gears like that. And if you mix it up, like, yeah, it's one thing if you go too hard at home, but if you're like kicking indoors as an FBI agent and you have a moment of soft femininity, that's your life is in danger, like it is that real. And so like, did she recognize in herself, like, I have to choose between my career and a family, or what did the decision look like for her?
I'm certain they got divorced. I never did check up on them, but I'm certain they were getting divorced after there's no way because I ended up working with both of them, which I sometimes do. I'll alternate. It's not like I never talk to the husband, but I could just tell it was heading that way. And then the last few times she would try to put something into action, but it was a half-assed effort, and she just could not get off the blame train. I mean, she was just about him the whole time. There was nothing wrong with her, everything wrong with him. And when I got into the whole being an FBI versus being a wife and a mother, and, well, what are you expecting me to do? What are you asking me to do? I'm like, well, here's where you are, right? If you're not going to leave your position, which I assume you're not, what's your alternative if you want to stay married? You can stay the way you are and have things be horrible. You can get divorced and deal with the fallout of that because they had 2 small children. You can quit your job as an FBI agent and just throw yourself into being a wife and mother, which she wasn't going to do that. Or you can try my way, which is, here's how you have to be at home and here's what you have to be at work, and they don't match. And you have to learn a new set of skills. So that's what I'm offering, and if you don't like it, then you're back to staying the way things are now, or getting divorced, or leaving your job, or whatever the case may be.
All those are pretty terrible options, unfortunately.
Well, I'd like to think mine isn't a terrible option. What I'm suggesting.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to say that it is, but like the notion of like being 2 completely different people at home and at work, like that's quite difficult,
So here's how I liken it. See, I don't think of it as, when I say that, that is true. I'm saying, come 5 o'clock, you shift into a wife and mother mode. I am saying that. That's true. But I don't see it as, I certainly don't see it as impossible. And I see it as difficult at first because it's so new. But once you've tried it on for size and you've seen the results, how quickly they work too, it's the idea is that it propels you forward because you see how effective it is. But also, I like to say, it's not like you're being 2 different people. I mean, when you go to a funeral, you dress different, you talk different, you behave different than you do if you go to a wedding. But you're still Will.
Yes.
In both places.
But I don't go to funerals and weddings every day.
That's true. Good point. But I mean, it's, it would be, that is interesting. Imagine that from going to a wedding and a funeral every day forever.
Yeah.
That would be weird. I don't know.
But you're right.
I don't know how to say except that it's a very new idea that seems very difficult, but all I can say is after you've been successful, it's really not a big deal.
Okay, so it actually works. So you have found women that can keep their career and be happy and fulfilled at it while being a wife and mother at home, and manage to strike that balance, right, in a way that works for them.
Well, I don't know how successful that hardcore career women are at it. No.
Okay.
So we have to qualify what we mean by working. I'm a huge fan of part-time work for women.
Okay. Yes, that's right.
Women who are mothers and wives and mothers, not just women, but you have to separate all these categories. Being a career woman, or mapping out your life like a man's, living like a man's, as if you are not ever going to be a wife and mother, and then you become a wife and mother, you're going to struggle because your eggs are in this other basket and you're trying to throw in the wife and mother thing along the way, and it's not working. So that person might struggle. I wouldn't say that 100% of the people that I work with are career women. They work, but not necessarily full-time year round. So a couple of them have, and I think that it is true. The more they're doing that, the less successful they're going to be with what I teach, for sure, because it requires time and energy that you don't have, or that you're choosing not to have, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I tend to say is, women haven't been given all the information they need to make an informed decision with their life.
Bingo.
Their culture tells them yeah. It's like, well, why don't you just give them the option of being wives and mothers and say, look, these are the two paths, one or the other. You can choose this, but one will come at the expense of the other.
Bingo.
And trust women being smart enough to make the decision for themselves.
That has been my argument forever. And I'm, over the years, I've had people be like, so are you saying women shouldn't work? You want women to go, you want to go back to the 50s. That's not the point. The point is exactly as you said. You can do whatever you want. Understand the trade-offs.
That's
and
right.
Be prepared. And parents do not prepare their daughters in particular. They just tell them, they talk to them the way they talk to their sons, as though they're the same. They raise their daughters like they raise their sons, as if their daughters aren't hugely different from their sons anatomically, and that their bodies are not going to do something totally different than their sons' bodies are, and they are going to respond to that differently and have different needs and desires as a result of that. And to just skip over that part and act like they're never going to have children is insane. It's just it's neglectful, in my opinion. As a parent.
Cruel. That's cruel. Whether it's consciously cruel or unconsciously cruel, it is. And, it's also just completely buying into the propaganda. It's fearful. It's unquestioning. It's all these terrible conformist qualities that humans have. That we talked about that are just it's like they're all surfacing right now in humanity, and we were talking about one expression of it in men and women and sexuality and male and female relationships and marriage and stuff, but like it's showing up everywhere where it's like, this is obviously not working. Why are you still doing it? Right? I
mean, the lack of courage is pretty astounding.
Yeah.
Parents, adults are just as susceptible to conformist thinking and behaviors as young people are. They don't want to they don't want to raise their children any differently than they're supposed to raise them. And you're supposed to raise their daughters to do anything they want, be anything they want, sky's the limit. And then they just stop with the conversation right there. There's no caveats. There's no thinking long-term and how are you going to make this work 10 years down the road? There's none of that. Makes me crazy.
It makes society miserable. It's like, it's sort of a lose-lose situation where it's like, you see all these miserable marriages which can be miserable for all kinds of reasons. But what we're talking about now is, where you have an inverted relationship where the woman wears the pants and bosses the man around, who slowly withers and bends his back over time. And both people are miserable. And if you were to suggest to them, like, your attitudes about, masculinity and femininity, and say that you're talking to them about raising their kids, your attitudes towards marriage have made you both miserable, and you're going to pass these on to your kids. You can raise them to be happier. It just means questioning everything that you believe. And they can't do that. They can't look at the wreckage of their lives and say, like, oh no, we're doing everything right. It's like, I don't know what to do.
No. Have you read The Courage to be Disliked?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's your second thing to do after Far from the Madding Crowd. I can't wait to talk to you after you've watched and read these things. The Courage to be Disliked.
Okay, The Courage to be Disliked.
Yeah, The Courage to be Disliked. And it's a Japanese phenomenon. 3 million books sold. It's been out for a little while, and I'm just recently stumbled upon it. Two Korean gentlemen are manifesting Alfred Adler's philosophy. It was Freud. Who's the other one? And Adler. And Adler's less well known. Jung, thank you. Freud, Jung, and Adler's the lesser known of the three. But his philosophy it's funny. I mean, I've been living by it my whole life. I didn't even know that it came from Alfred Adler. Not that it came from it, that it matches, I should say. And it's so much about having the courage to, we don't have to get into a long thing about it goes off on another another place that we're not going to talk about today. But anyway, the point is to have courage to be who you are, irrespective of what the people around you are doing, and how hard that is for people because they compare themselves. And that the gist of it is that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. That's the base of his theory. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. So they're not internal within you as an individual. It has to do with how you relate or can't relate to other people around you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fascinating, but that's a piece of it is the needing to go along to get along, you know, and it takes courage to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about parenting, not having the courage to say to your daughters, hey, 10 years from now, you're going to be in a pickle if you map out your life like this.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot map it out the way a man maps out his. They're different.
Yeah.
And you're not equal, you know? So, you know, here's plan B, which is different from what the culture is telling them.
Mm-hmm. And plan B used to be plan A.
Plan B used to be plan A.
Right.
Plan A was never, you're not good enough for anything else. Just pop out a bunch of babies and be happy. That was never even imparted on women in any major way at all. It was, they were a product of the environment and the things that they had available to them at the time. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's, you know, you're going to have a different kind of life if you have 7 children than if you have 2.
Right.
And now that people just have 2, if even, they're going to have very different lives from your mothers and your grandmothers.
Mm-hmm. And men don't experience work as liberating. Like men don't go. It's like men go off the office like, I feel so free to sit in meetings all day and take notes and do what this dickhead boss says. Like, I'm so liberated. God forbid I be at home. What slavery that would be. So retarded. But we believe
I'm
this.
thinking about my husband just going, God, I wish I had your life, woman, you know, because I don't have a boss, you know, and I don't have to show up. If I don't want to show up tomorrow to work, I don't. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, within reason he can, of course. He's been in the working world for a long time. But you know what I mean? He has the weight on him that I don't have.
That's right. Ask him if he feels liberated in that weight, you know?
Right.
Do you feel, congratulations, women. You're sitting in your cubicle. Do you feel liberated? How's that feel?
I mean, seriously.
It's insane. And even saying that, it's like, what? Do you mean that women are second-class citizens? Like, what? You're insane. Leave. Just go away. The adults are talking.
So, Will, how you're in Arizona? So, what percentage? How many women out of 10 do you know or run across or date or whoever who get it versus who don't? Who are acculturated or who are not? Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
I would say, if I had to guess, and I, because I've been living in Arizona only since the pandemic, I haven't been as out and social as I would otherwise have been. So I'll look at the women over the course of my life. Let me look at it that way.
Stop. I'm going to stop you for a minute. You're frozen. Just want to let you know that.
Oh, am I?
I don't know if that matters or not, but I'm just telling you. Can
you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I'll be back then. If the video is frozen, I'll be back.
Okay.
So I'm going to I'm going to say that you're talking about women that I've met over my lifetime as opposed to women that I know now, because I don't know too many right now. But I would say that if women who are acculturated versus women who are asking questions, I would say that out of 10, like 9.5 at the minimum are acculturated. Like the number of women who are asking questions is fantastically low. Has been my experience. Some are, but I think what I experience is that they run into the programming inside their own mind. You know, inside their own, like they want to begin moving in a more feminine versus feminist direction. They want to move into, you know, being a mother in a home and all this stuff. But the programming runs so deep, it's generational. Yeah. And they still will bump up against it. It's like, no, this doesn't feel right. I still have to push back. I still can't do this. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, I mean, there's only that. So that's even in that, you know, 0.5% or whatever, it's still, you know, it's in there. It's in everybody. I don't think any woman, unless she was raised in, you know, a really devout, religious Christian household, has escaped the programming, the feminist
No,
program.
I
It's
agree
that
with that.
pervasive.
I agree with
Yeah.
that completely. But I just feel like there's such a missed opportunity because it isn't going with the program or being barefoot and pregnant. There's this
Right.
huge middle ground. Why don't they know? And why has nobody come along to say you don't have to choose between those extremes? There's a whole life you can have in the middle here. And here's what it looks
Yes.
like. You step out for a few years, you enjoy that time, you go back in, you're part-time, you make a little money, but you're freed up from having to be dependent upon financially,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can do these other things. Or if you want to later on, then you do. I mean, like, why is that not? I mean, I just know that if that's presented to most women, at least most marriage-minded women, because I hear from them that they would go with that they want that. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's just skipped over. It's like you're either this or you're that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can speculate as to why. I think one is that people are in general not good at shades of gray thinking. Like it's either one or the other. That's just kind of how our brains seem to be wired. I think that way, and I think also there's a component of and men are susceptible to this as well, of lust for money.
Yes.
That it's like the idea, like, oh no, if you make whatever, say $100,000 in your career now, but if you're going to step out for a few years and do part-time work or whatever, then you'll be making $20,000, and that's scarcity. You know what I mean? And so there's probably some of that.
So much more. You're getting so much more. You're right.
Right.
That's that, and everything is given a dollar amount. And if it doesn't have the dollar, then it has no worth.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, talk about missing the boat completely.
Yeah.
I can't imagine spending my life believing that. I mean,
yeah, but you did though, right? Like your first book was the Alpha Females Guide. Like, you had some of these ideas, or maybe
no, I didn't have ideas about what we're talking about now with working full time and money and all that. No, that book was about being a strong-willed person, controlled. Like I like control.
Okay.
I like to make sure everything, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted and everything has to be just so. And it was about learning how to be more softer and more relaxed and let things go and not direct everybody's traffic. That's what it was about. And that is something that can happen even as a stay-at-home mom. You could be a stay-at-home mom and be that way.
Got
so
it.
It wasn't about working. In fact, my whole career has been totally countercultural. My whole life has been countercultural from day one. Even when I was in college, I was figuring out how I was going to do this thing when nobody was talking about motherhood in college. So,
oh wow, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not like somebody. I know most people that you meet, they started really feminist or something, and then they saw the light, and that wasn't my story.
Oh, okay.
No.
So what was your story? Because I saw the Alpha Females Guide and I started reading it, and I had in my mind that it was speaking to career women, but now this makes a lot more sense, that it's like the helicopter parent, the need to be in control, like that can manifest whether you have a career or not.
Yes. No, it's much more personality, behavioral, mindset, not money or career focused per se. Although you're right, people think, alpha women, you're automatically going to have a career. Or be a career woman. And that's sometimes true, but that's not always true. In fact, I would argue that there's a lot. I don't know. I can't really compare them, but let's suffice to say, plenty of at-home moms can have these tendencies as well.
For sure. Yeah. Like the tiger moms, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So talk about you in college when you're thinking about these things, because I want to see if I can draw the contrast between your ideas and women who think of themselves as units of economic production, and their liberation can come through their wallet rather than the ability to feel like love. I've heard about this thing, love, but that's how women think. They don't know they think that way, but that's how they think. For those who are just listening, their face just fell.
I mean, I'm just thinking like let's just start out by saying, I mean, I definitely, and I've been told over and over, so I guess I'll have to take them at their word. I'm not the average person. I'm definitely a little different. I am. I mean, I have to sort of accept that. Sure. And that has its negatives too, because there are times where I'm, if you're not following the crowd, then you're on your own, But I believe it all has to do with the mother that I had, who was, like I said, very typical of today, but not for her day. So I got this message early on that most people didn't as a result of that. So my mom went to Washington University in St. Louis for her bachelor's, and then she got her MBA at Radcliffe, which was the sister school to Harvard. She was born in 1930, so this would have been around 1950, I guess between 48 and 52, 53, something like that. And then she worked in New York and DC, and then ultimately came back to St. Louis, which is where we live. And she was a stockbroker.
Oh, wow.
And she was in that world for 15 years before she quit to stay home with my sister and me when we were 5 and 3.
Okay.
So she was living a life that is, as I say, very typical of today, but unheard of in her day. So she was
a stockbroker, which is a pretty masculine profession
even
today.
I mean, she was written up in the papers, one of 3 women,
Wow.
in the state or whatever in the area. That kind of thing. And so, and just even looking back at it now, it just looks so, it must, somebody else just be like, wow, that's so bizarre looking. To me, it was just normal. It was just, that was my life. That was my mom.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And
I see where you're going.
She tried to do both simultaneously, being utterly clueless that you can't be doing that and having small children. It's all just going to fall into place, especially back in the day when men definitely just went to work, which they legitimately did. Like that was the extent of the expectation, was that they worked and brought home the money. And that was pretty much it. And that was how my dad was. I don't mean they were never helpful at home, but just that there wasn't an expectation that they take on a second shift the way it is today. That's what I'm saying. But of course you're going to take on a second shift if you're a woman, for sure, because you had those babies and you're different from men. So she did that until she couldn't take it anymore. And it was pretty bad in those early years. And I found diaries, and it was bad. So anyway, she quit and never went back. And then she grew up. I mean, she raised me. I heard things growing up like, you can't have it all. You can't do both of these things at the same time. Your children need you. I wish I stayed home. I made a mistake. Blah, blah, blah. This is what was drilled into me my whole life. If I came up with a career choice, it was, okay, that's going to be perfect because here's what you can do. You're going to be at school when your kids are at school, then you can be home when they're home. That was from both my parents. Like everything was about figuring it all out based on this experience that they had that did not work. So in fairness to my contemporaries, if they had housewives as mothers, which most of them did, and they never tried it, they might have thought there was another way of doing it. And I knew there wasn't, because the kids get the fallout of that, and the moms are unhappy, and the marriages start to fall away, and all of that. So that, I believe, is why I'm different from most of my contemporaries with respect to that subject of the money, career, the work, family, all that stuff.
Because you got a healthy upbringing, but sort of backwards. Your parents had discovered firsthand what didn't work, and were like, "Don't ever do that," right? Mostly from my mom. Yeah. My dad would chime in about how to balance those things later. That's true. But yeah, mostly from my mom. She was the one telling me, your kids are very, very, babies need you. They're demanding. There's only so many hours in the day. Yeah. All of that stuff. You just don't hear. Yeah. Cause she had made the mistake of trying something else.
Right.
And discovered that just doesn't work.
No.
Don't do this, Suzanne.
No. And she didn't, there was no daycare back then for middle class. I mean, she would never have done daycare. So she had I guess you'd call her a nanny.
Which would have been the only option, right?
Yeah. Yep. And so, yeah, I think that's why I'm different, for lack of a better word, I guess.
So while you're in college and you're around, many of your, I would imagine.
Boston, I might add. Not in some local Midwestern town. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So while you're surrounded by what must be some pretty radical feminist contemporaries.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how was that?
I was a conservative girl from the Midwest. All my friends were from the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay.
I was definitely the oddball. And I didn't care. I don't care.
You have the courage to be disliked.
Yeah, there you go. It didn't bother me at all, but it was definitely a thing for sure. And, I just kind of laugh about it now, because in that respect, just with respect to work and family, that conversation, it worked out beautifully. I mean, I love it. I love my life. I don't have any
Okay.
regrets. There's never been any guilt. I've never had stress where, oh my God, I got to do this. I got to do that. Because I could always say no, because all the work that I ever did do, I did around, I always worked part-time, and I always did it around my focus was my kids. My home life. I'm happier. I'm happy there. And my stuff I've done outside of that has been something that I do in my off hours instead of watching TV or playing tennis or doing something else. That's what I do. You know, I mean, that's, yeah.
Can we go back to your college days real quick? I have some questions, because as I'm imagining, like, I don't know that conservative viewpoints are tolerated within universities at all now, meaning it's probably 100% homogenous, versus back then you could probably have dissenting views.
You could.
But so what was that like though? Were they laughing at you? Like, was it casual? Like, that's Suzanne, she's just crazy or whatever? Because now they're pulling down statues and protesting.
Yeah, no, there wasn't any of that. There wasn't any of that. It was more like, it wasn't you're crazy. It was like, what? Like, it's almost like you'd said, I don't know, like, I don't know. Something so outlandish that they've just never heard before. What do you mean?
Wow.
What do you mean? They couldn't get their head around it.
That's so weird, because that was their mother's lives. Like, it's not that far removed from them.
I know. I have to think about my closest friends, but yeah, it was their mother's lives. But remember, they're raised to not live their mother's lives.
That's true.
They had an obligation to have a different kind of life, because that life was bad.
Yes.
That's what they're raised with. I wasn't raised with, you need to have this other life because it's bad to be at home with children, or it's bad to be a mom, or it's oppressive. Like, I would never have gotten that message from my mother or my father or anybody in my family. And they were all highly educated women who pursued careers throughout their lives at some point. Like, it was not an either or. That's why I'm always saying, like, there's this whole other middle ground, people. It doesn't have to be this or that.
Yes. Well, because they had the indoctrination come in. Like, this is something I've been trying to unpack with my friends. Like, gosh, what happened in that generation? Because it was like there was one break in the chain, and the consequences of the break have been catastrophic. My friend Jonathan yesterday said the boomers traded in ancestral wisdom for institutional knowledge. Meaning, like, there's all this human
100%.
wisdom that, it was like, it blew me away. I'm like, dude, you got to tweet that, do something with that, because it's brilliant. Because that's what happened, is that there was that one generation that decided to throw away all this wisdom and like, no, we're going to trust the experts. We're going to trust the professors. We're going to trust the science. We're going to trust the philosophers. Threw away thousands of generations of wisdom. And now look where we are. And so we were trying to unpack together how that happened.
Well, the 1960s. It was a gradual thing. Now, that's another thing I didn't mention about my parents. They were raised in, my dad was born in 1922, my mom in 1930. They were from the greatest generation. So the values that and I'm an Xer. So I had she didn't end up having me until she was 38 because of her career.
Wow. Oh yeah. Okay. I was doing the math on that.
Yeah. So the values I was raised with were very much the greatest generation, not boomer values, not feminist liberation values at all. But they lived quote unquote feminist lives. They all had master's degrees. They all worked, but they also embraced marriage and motherhood, and they stayed married for decades, and they didn't say anything negative about men, like men suck, or like there was none of that. The women that you knew around you, or you mean your parents? Yeah, my mother, all the women, my cousins, my aunt, everybody all the women in my family, my grandmother. Nobody had a feminist mind, but they just did what they wanted. So there was no, like, they didn't think there were any limits on anything, but they embraced family. They embraced motherhood. They embraced being a wife. They would never have dissed those roles, I guess is what I'm saying. They did those roles, and they happened to also get educated and work at different parts in their life. Got it. So I see what you mean now about like the shades of gray. Like, no, you can kind of do all these things. You just can't do them all at once. Right there. So you must have seen this. I'm praying that you have. Is it possible to unplug the feminist mind? Because I love that you called it the feminist mind, because it is a mind. It's a totality.
It's not just a set of beliefs that ride
No,
along the top, like I have this
no.
preference or not.
Mm-mm.
It's the full woman's being. It is a separate mind. Can it be unplugged? Please tell me the truth, but please tell me that the truth is that it can be. No is an okay answer.
No, I'll tell you exactly what I've seen. The people who are 150% ready to let go of it, as a whole, not always, but majority, like almost for certain, are like 35 plus.
Ugh.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't 20-something. I hear from countless 20-somethings who are like, holy crap, how do I believe you. I agree with you. I don't understand this. I don't want this. How do I find the men who like non-feminist women? So they're out there for sure. But they're the smaller percentage of their group, of the 20-something group. Whereas the older women are like so ready for a different life and a different world. And it makes me sad because I think, I've had this conversation with my husband a bunch of times. It's like, how do I win? Because if they're over 35, there's all these mistakes that have been made, right? And it's really hard to kind of undo it. And although I'm not a pessimist, and I believe anybody can change your life at any time, but it's a lot harder to do some of the things that I'm encouraging when you're 35, 40 than it is with your 25, 30. But then when you're young, you're not ready to hear it yet. But then when you're older, you are, but it's going to often be too late. So it's very difficult. And sometimes I think just a lot more time needs to pass so that the next generation can see there's got to be another way. Which there is. Thank you very much. There is. It's just so few people see it or want to see it. And then there's the whole issue of money, which when you've spent your whole life, like you said, going that route where that's the focus, you end up making decisions based on money reasons. Well, like a really obvious one is people are buying houses based on 2 incomes before they have children, under the assumption that you're always going to be in the workforce, not realizing you're locking yourself in. So 3 years down the road, you're like, shit, you have a baby and you're like, oh my God, I want to be with my baby. Oh, I can't. I got to go make money.
Yeah.
And at that point, well, you shouldn't have bought the house based on 2 incomes. There's a way to do that differently before you get into that boat.
Yep.
That's an example.
No, I have a couple friends. Well, I haven't talked to them in a while, but they lived in San Francisco and they bought a house in San Francisco, which I don't know why they did that, but they did. And, you can't own a house in San Francisco without being 2 incomes.
Of course not.
They've had 2 kids, 2 boys. And I think she went back to work within like 6 weeks of and it's so that they could do their thing. And their sons have been raised by a nanny. And it's like you've missed your children's lives. Like for what? For a house? Like for what? And I remember back in the day, like I challenged them on this, like, like my buddy, I'll call him Tom. It's not his real name. I challenged him like, well, why are you buying this house? Like, the math, like, oh, we want to have some place for our parents to stay. I was like, well, yeah, stay. Like, yeah, why here? Like, why are you locking yourself into this? And it just seemed like it was like fait accompli. Like they had decided on this track somewhere in their mind that they must have house in San Francisco, and that has some significance or some symbolism to it. So they lock themselves into this, and then they're set. Like, oh, this house is our retirement. He had also said, I'm like, you're making this enormous series of cascading disastrous mistakes that will affect so much. For why? And that's a great example. It's like people don't see that once you commit to a 2-income house, your wife can no longer stay home with her children, your children, even if she wants to. What are you going to do with that? And people don't even see it. I don't get it.
And you know why they don't? It goes back to what we were saying before. Because people lack the courage to do exactly what you just said. Because in order to say it, you're not going to be liked. You're going to be saying something wrong. But your silence, you're part of the problem in my book. Because your lack of courage to say to and I think you should say this as a parent. If it was a 25-year-old, 35-year-old kid of mine who, my kids are not going to do this. They will not do that because they've been raised to be too smart for that. But if they were, I would stop and say, hey, I don't want to get involved in your financial affairs, but I need to tell you this. and then you don't know how you're going to feel, you're closing that option off. I'm not telling you you're going to be wanting to do that, but you don't even have the option if you do this.
Yeah.
No one will say that, because you just don't say that, because everyone's going to be working always at all times, 100% of the time. And the thought that you wouldn't do that would be unheard of.
Yeah. But you can't make that case anymore either, because after 2020, it's like, no, everything is not going to stay the same and continue getting better for all time. That's always been the thing. It's like housing prices will always go up. Everything will always get better. It's like, no, things got miserably shit worse in 2020 and they're barely recovering now. So that puts the lie to that entire worldview. And yet we were talking about this before we started recording, like the whole masks thing and that whole thing that gets right back to the courage to be disliked. It's like, this is obviously not working. It's been 2 years. Why are you still doing this? Because they lack the courage to be disliked.
Everything comes down to that. I mean, it really does. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
Well, so like, have you walked any women through? Like, okay, so I understand that women over the age of 35 are having. I saw this described as a deathbed conversion. Is the way that but what they actually, with this article or whatever I was reading actually called it, maybe it was a meme, said that women at 30 are having a deathbed conversion. You know what I mean?
I've seen it up close. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that the women at that age are really ready to do it. Like, how do you, I mean, I guess, how do you even do that? I mean, they're ready to unplug themselves, but like, is it painful? Are they angry? Do they throw things? Do they hate their mothers? Do they want to burn their televisions? Because that's how I would feel. It's like the catastrophic scale of the lie that they'd internalized into their body must be enraging.
Thank you. It's enraging. I think it's more enraging to me. Because it's not my mother that did it, but I feel through the screen that they haven't hit the mad stage yet when they talk to me. They're at the awakening where they are realizing the scope of what you just said. They're not mad yet. They're like, why? What just happened? And it takes months to sort of absorb this. I don't know if they went into anger stage later. It depends on how quickly they could recoup, right? They go into fast action at that point, around that age, and that's one of the reasons why I make an argument for earlier marriage,
right?
For women, not early marriage, but earlier. So statistically speaking, you are far more likely to get divorced if you get married under 25 than you are at 25. So 25 is an ideal age, but it's not like everyone's going to be able to do the exact ideal. I'm just giving the stats. Sure. And that doesn't mean that if you're not 25 yet, that you're doomed. Those are just the numbers. But,
let's not get absolutist now.
No, not at all.
Die right at 25.
No, not at all. Not at all. But there is something that happens at 30 to just about all women.
Yeah.
And when you start to try to look for a husband at that age, you're not going to be looking in the same way that you are at 25 or 22, 23, 24, because you cannot not think about the baby you so desperately want. And that is going to get in the way of your choice, of your ability to choose. That's probably the number one reason for me to say earlier marriage is better, because you want to remove that clock that you're feeling, and yet hurry up and get it over with and figure it out from the equation when you're deciding who to marry. It's the most important decision you're ever going to make. And you need to make it with clarity, without anything like that in your way. And most people today are not doing that. And they're marrying people because they want a baby. Bottom line, 10 years later, they're like, who did I marry? What did I do this for? Some of them don't even look at whether or not these men are employed, or how, or they're employed, but they're not, they're taking a man who's not yet a man, who hasn't found his way, and hoping that will work itself out because they just want a baby.
Yep. And what really sucks about this is that the women are blinded by the need to have children.
That's what I mean. Right.
And then they choose substandard men, and then guess whose fault it becomes? It's the man's fault. It's the man's fault. Bingo. And so it just reinforces all the programming. It's like, well, you married
100%,
him.
100%.
Can I tell a story real quick?
Mhm.
Okay. So I took a memoir writing class through a New York writing school, which I won't name. And, memoirs are like, you're supposed to be telling your kind of life story in a way. And so this woman was telling the story of, it was essentially, she's married to a man who was a narcissist, and she was escaping from the abusive marriage with the narcissist. The story picks up in the middle when they're married and they're sitting on the couch, and he makes some comment, some completely insensitive comment about her looks or something like that. And the whole thing is framed in this way of like, he's oppressing her and it's terrible and she needs to get away from the marriage. And so this was submitted to the class for feedback. and me, reading all this stuff, I read this, I'm like, well, it might help me as a reader to know, like, how did you marry this guy? Like, you met him, he courted you, you were engaged, you got married. Like, how did you get through that whole process? It might lend some context that makes your eventual escape more meaningful to understand how you got into this marriage, because you married him. I got in so much trouble.
I'm sure you did.
I got in so much trouble. The whole class erupted. This was all online. It was all in text. It wasn't like on Zoom or anything. People furious at my comments. The teacher said, had been on vacation. She said she had to go to the administration because I'd never encountered anything like that before, and they were trying to figure out what to do about me.
Go, Will. The courage to be disliked. There you go.
Oh, man.
Courage.
Oh, it's like, it seems like the most obvious question. It's like, you married him. Like, no one slammed the ring on your finger.
I mean, they literally have never heard it's being asked anything like that. It just blows them away. That's called taking a responsibility for my part of the equation, and we just don't do that. I have a question for you now. I don't want to forget. What separates a guy today who checks out, like the MGTOW, I guess, or like just says, I'm done with women, versus the ones who see what's happening but stay in the game and marry any, like they don't hold out for the woman who questions things and is not acculturated, but they just because men don't want babies as bad as women generally. I mean, they want family.
It's not a biological urge.
Yeah, it's not like I think you'll find more men who would be okay with not having children than you would find women who are okay not having children. I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's right. Not to say that men don't want children, but just I think you could talk them into it more, I guess, than a woman. I don't know. But
I know what you mean.
Is it just the desire to have a family that would make a man in this environment? I know that a whole bunch of them are just, they've bought into the whole feminist thing, so they think it's great. Yeah, so there's that group. But I mean the ones who see what's happening and I don't know, they just wait it out for a woman who gets it.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is heart. I think it's really, and I'm going to do an email newsletter about this, but for those listening, get a preview. I think that there's the word heart is, when it applies to men, there's two sides to it. The first thing is like a man needs to have heart. Generally, that's what we mean, like emotional accessibility and vulnerability, like some amount of emotion. But there's another kind of heart, which is like the heart of a lion, which is not emotional vulnerability. It's like courage, right? And so those two aspects of having heart meet. And I think it's that aspect of men, like whether they have heart, where they have emotional accessibility, whether they want to love and feel loved, and then they have courage to confront the dating market in order to have some amount of emotional fulfillment. And so you have to have both. You have to be courageous to step out there and be like, and even see the disaster, the wreckage, but because you have so much love to give. And I think that's the difference between the MGTOWs and men who stay in it, because the MGTOWs, I think, have just decided, I don't need love, and I don't have love to give, and it's not important to me as a man or as a person, so I'm just going to go do my own thing. Then I think that those men don't have heart, because I think all men deep down, whether they would articulate it or not, but I think they know this, they want to be loved. They want to know what it's like to be loved. They were little boys at some point. They were loved by their mothers and their fathers and their siblings and presumably their relatives, and they remember that feeling. And as we grow up as men, we have to harden ourselves against the world and kind of become the warrior, right? That's part to succeed. That's we have, but inside we still have the feeling of wanting to be loved and knowing what that's like and wanting to get back to that and having love to give of ourselves. And I think that's what drives, more so than having kids. Kids are an expression of that, but more so than having kids, I think that's what keeps men in the game, is that they know that about themselves, even though they couldn't articulate it.
And
that's
what separates the one who waits out for the woman who doesn't fall for the culture stuff versus the one who just takes what they can get once they're in the game? Or not takes what they can get, but like after the 8th, 10th, 12th date, 20th, 25th date, they're like, well, they're all the same, so I'll just pick one.
Yeah.
Versus, holding out for the gem.
Yeah. Faith. I can say that for myself. It's just faith. Plenty of experiences encountering the feminist disaster scape that is dating for men today. And, I have faith that, what I have faith in, actually, I have faith that someone will eventually meet me someday and will be like, how are you single?
Yeah.
Someone will figure it out. It's on the surface. It's all right there. So there's got to be one.
Are.
Right. Yeah. You'd be surprised. So I think that someone will crack the code. Someone will figure it out. Someone will decide that, that whatever it is that be a life with, maybe this is me being too vulnerable, but I'll say it anyway, that a life with me is worth whatever programming that they have to get rid of in themselves, that'll be worth it. And they'll be right.
And let's talk about the obvious flip side of this. How old are you?
I turned 44 in about 2 weeks.
Now, the harsh reality is a woman can't be that way at your age, or even
no. She
doesn't have that luxury.
That's right.
So right off the bat, men and women talk about not equal. We are not equal because that cannot be, that can't be. Everything you just said at your age cannot be for a woman. Cannot hold true for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You can marry someone 15 years younger if you want. So that's just the way it is. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, the difference, then there's a huge difference around the age of 35, because when I turned 35 as a man, that was when my body switched on, like, I must start preparing for family, like right. Well, sure. It was like, that was my male biological clock switching on, like, must start feathering nest, women coming, right? But versus for a woman, it's like the alarm bells are going off, like, oh my God, like it's the bottom of the fourth quarter, right? Bottom of the fourth quarter. So it's very different. They're different. Men and women are different. Congratulations. We're all canceled.
Crazy.
Yeah. So you're going to transition now from coaching into doing something a little different.
Yeah.
So a step off the battlefield.
Yeah. I'm stepping off the battlefield from that end. I'm doing the one-on-one, because the long-term marriage coaching is pretty intense. I mean, they can text me in between sessions. We're really in, we're all in. And it goes on for months, and I'm in your marriage, So I've taken a sabbatical from that, although I do still offer single session options. I have a few on there every week as a thing for a 1 hour, one-off kind of thing. But my focus is these two online courses that I'm putting together. One is for singles and one is for married couples. And it's essentially taking what I did in coaching, but making it accessible to everybody to go. It's like taking the content and putting it in the form of a course. And a course just has a combination of videos from me and written material, PDFs. It's like a whole thing. There's just a whole bunch of pieces to it that you buy as a package and then you download and do on your own. So it's like being coached by me, but not live. You've bought it in advance and you're putting the course into action. And then you can still get with me afterward if you still need that. But so it's a way of doing the same thing in a different form. But at any rate, it's taking a lot of time and energy to do and to put together. And I just couldn't do that with the long-term coaching. And I've also now taken a break from the podcast. I just announced that this past week. So I had to remove things off my plate if I want to really get serious about getting these done. So that's what I'm doing. A little shift.
what will the goal of the course or the courses be? Like, what's the desired end outcome?
Well, so the desired outcome for the singles is it's called the course is called The First 3 Dates. And
Oh, wow.
the purpose of this is to know within 3 dates whether you should waste your time on somebody or not. So
For both men and women, or
this
just for women?
particular course is just for women.
Okay.
This particular one, it's get in or get out. Here's what you look for. Don't waste time. You don't have time to waste. You don't want to waste time. You want to get married. This is for people who want to get married, not people who are just thinking about it. This is marriage minded. The goal is to get married. How do I weed out right away and know what to look for and make this happen?
Mm-hmm.
So that's for single women. And then the other course is much broader and much more extensive. And that's where the coaching part comes in. And it's called Total Marriage Makeover. And that one is the subtitle is a foolproof guide for frustrated husbands and wives.
So that's a couples thing.
It's a couples thing. That's for men and for women. It's basically, men, here's what you need to do on your end. Women, here's what you need to do on your end. Just worry about yourself. Don't worry about the other person. Here's your stuff. Get going. That's kind of the idea. So it's a little different. Same idea, just different approach.
Can you give like a sneak peek about some of the things that the couples will be doing in that course?
Well,
I'm curious myself.
It's not unlike a lot of what I've been doing for the past several years. So sure, men are going to get guidance, and it's more than just the guidance and the information, although there is that, but also the motivation, right? You having someone in your corner who's talking to you through the screen, who's explaining why and how this works and giving you examples from my own past coaching clients. So men would learn things like taking initiative, learning how to say no to your woman, acting, don't talk, act, all the things that women respond to positively and want from you that are not natural for you. For A, B, C, D reason. You didn't have a dad. Nobody told you. Your parents never showed you or modeled it, or, I don't know why she's acting this way, and how do I get her to not be this way? How can I get her to respect me more? So it's really honed in on respect, which is what men want, husbands want, most of all. And then for women, it's about being feminine, basically, and how to bring out the best in a man. So it's just looking at yourself and changing yourself, each person, not worrying about the other. And then if they're both doing it in the same marriage, ta-da, that's the idea.
And you've probably seen some of this, some of this magic in action where it's just like the light goes off where people are like, oh my gosh, I've been acting backwards the whole time.
Yes, but I've been too honed in on the women.
Okay.
And in so thinking, like I said at the beginning, thinking men should be coached by men and women by women. But now I'm sort of changing my tune on that. And I feel like, because I get a lot of men who reach out to me, like, I love your stuff on YouTube. Can you help me with A, B, C, D, E? So that's why I decided to do this course for both men and women. And so instead of just the women, because I get a lot of women who'll be like, I try this, but he's still not A, B, C, D, and it should work ideally unless your man is really, really struggling in certain areas personally, which a lot of men are, let's face it. So I thought, I'll just combine this so that he's doing something simultaneously and she's doing something. And if they're both changing themselves, it should be far faster than it would be if one. Although I still argue that all it takes is one person to change and the other person will respond to that. I still hold by that, but I do think it'll be twice as fast if both people are doing it.
I agree.
There's
That's
also
interesting.
a lot less resentment of feeling like you're the only one changing.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I don't know that I would I don't know that I would think that there would be too many women that could pull off coaching for men and masculinity, but like, I think you could actually do it, like just in talking to you, because normally I would say that women should coach women and men should coach men, but I can see in what you're doing, especially in marriages, that like, that wouldn't be super productive to have the man have a coach and the woman have a coach. Like they need one coach, to be delivering a holistic method. But like not every woman could coach a man towards masculinity in integrity. You know what I mean? Because
No,
you're
and
not going to
I think what's going to allow it to be advantageous is that I've now spent the last 6 months. I'm still somewhat new to YouTube. It
Mm,
says I've been there since 2017, but I didn't do anything for years. So it's really only been like 6 months, maybe a
mm,
year. I don't even know. I'm losing track of the time. There's a lot of stuff on there where men can hear from me. Like the
hmm.
one that sits at the top is 6 things women need to know about men. And men
Yep.
love that. So
It's a
they'll
great video.
see me, they see what I stand for, they see who I am, and they trust me. And so I think that having that up there lends itself well to the course then for that alone, because they already know who I am. Because a lot of people, a lot of men get dragged into therapy, and the women
Hmm.
are, first of all, really feminist minded and very much side with the women. So there's that. Not
Yep.
all of them, but a lot of them do. And men don't feel heard in that space. And
No.
I'm not on a side. I'm really genuinely not on a side because I'm not a feminist minded person. I don't have that mind.
Yes. I mean, I hear that as, yes, you're not on the side, but of course a feminist will hear that and say like, no, you're very clearly on the side. You're the bad side. But like, yeah, I know what you mean, because there are so many men who are forced into couples counseling or therapy or whatever. And if the therapist has an anti-male bias, which most therapists do, that's a trap for men. That's a terrible, terrible
Terrible
trap for
trap for
men.
men.
Yeah, because then everything becomes his fault,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows up in all these terrible ways where it's like, does my partner here have anything to do with this, or is this just me because I'm shit? Like, and men will take men. This is what men do. They will take that in order to preserve the marriage. So like, okay, fine,
Yes.
I will take on all the
Yes.
shame and
Yes.
carry everything like
Yep.
like a donkey.
I've had to
That's
tell
who.
husbands what is okay and not okay to accept. And most like therapists don't really do that. They'll happily tell that to the woman. Don't take this from no man. But they're not
Right.
going to say to a man, she shouldn't be talking to you like that.
That's right. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you find that as you've been putting together this coach, is there like one overarching problem in relationships that the course is designed to address, or that your work in general kind of addresses? Like is there is it? I know there's no silver bullets, but is there something that ties it all together that you find?
Just what we said at the opening, that the woman's walking around in her masculine and the man is letting it
Oh,
happen
mhm.
and stepping back, and she's not seeing that she's rejecting the very thing that's going to make her marriage come alive, and he doesn't see that he's rejecting the very thing that's going to make his marriage come alive. And those things are the exact opposite of what the culture tells them to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
Women are told to be ball busters, and men are told to be more feminine. And they're listening and they're trying it out in their relationships, and it's not working because it's
Mhm.
anti-nature. It goes against what your body and mind wants to do. And if you just relax into what you've been given and don't question it and try to change it and fight it, then you will find harmony.
Have you ever encountered some of like the new age goddess types, who like they're feminine, but they use their femininity to control men? Like it's not a surrendering
Mm-mm,
femininity. Have you ever encountered
mm-mm.
that? Okay. No, okay. Maybe
I don't know what that is.
yeah. So I mean, like the new age world has all these inverted notions about relationships, since you have a lot of women stepping into they call it like goddess culture, but it's like, it's kind of like boss girl or bad bitch culture, but like
But,
in some sort of new age kind of hippie priestess kind of way, where
well,
it's like,
actually, I have had a person or two reach out to me, I think, that might have represented that, and I kind of smelled that and didn't.
what
Didn't think
do
that was
you,
for
what do
me.
you, oh, you're like,
I
I
didn't
can't,
think
I can't.
so. I couldn't quite figure it out, but maybe I've heard from somebody like that, and that's what it was, and I didn't know.
Yeah. Some of the men in my sphere are encountering lots of men coming from the new age world who are interested in Christianity and masculinity and stuff, because the new age world is not very masculine at all. So I wonder if you've encountered some of that. So you also mentioned like the course for singles, and so like talk about the modern dating scene, because we've talked about like 35 plus, but like and dating apps. I will not use dating apps anymore. Like online dating is done for me, like for all kinds of reasons. But it's like people used to meet in person. Like I'm gonna try that one.
Was it just horrible? Your whole experience? Was there any?
a wasteland, a wasteland of bad decisions. Okay, the three things on Tinder. The last time I was on Tinder, which was about a year ago, it was the smallest incremental step I could take to get back into the dating market after being out for 8 years. Like, hey, what's the one thing that I know? One positive step was Tinder. Tinder was a wasteland of single motherhood, obesity, and tattoos, which are all the consequences of no one saying there are consequences to your decisions. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no one had ever told these girls that there are consequences to your decisions,
mm-hmm.
and so that's what it was.
Wow.
And then there would be like the one real person girl, like, oh, that's a real person, and I can't even imagine what her messages look like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So the singles that I've worked with haven't been of that caliber, I guess.
No, that's
just been regular Joes or Joannes. But what did you ask me specifically? What they're struggling with? What they're
about the dating scene and dating apps? Like, yeah.
So the overarching, glaring problem to me, which is so solvable, are two things. Stop having sex so quickly with these people. That's number one. Uh-huh. Hello, this is not rocket science. Well,
seems pretty obvious.
What?
Seems pretty obvious, right?
Really obvious to me. It does, but not to other people.
That's the other unquestionable thing.
And stop living with people to whom you're not married or engaged. These are two very simple tactics that will make a world of difference in your ability to find someone to marry and fast. Stop sleeping with them. So like the last person, not the last person, but an overarching, that's my message when a person works with me, by the way, and some people can accept it and some people can't. But the last one who did was very serious and put everything into action right away and was married and now has a baby a year later. And she was dating someone and she would not have sex with him. And this was new for her. She was working with me at the time. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, he never heard that before, but okay, I guess I'll stick around or whatever. And then she goes out with him again because he appeared to be okay with that. But then he starts to ask if they can have other kinds of sex. So he's like, it's like asking for everything other than traditional put it in sex. And she's like, no, I mean, like, yeah, you can. I'm not saying you can't have any physical interaction with someone that you're dating. That's not what I'm saying. Man. I'm saying you don't get naked. Just don't get naked. Bottom line.
Okay.
And so she, by the third date, he realized she was serious. It took all that time. And what do you know? She didn't hear from him again. So some people will say to me, well, then they just go to get it from someone else. Great.
Yeah, that's the point.
Sayonara. Next. I mean, this is a process, right? It's allowing you to not waste time. If you had done that, you would have strung this out. He would have happily had sex for as long as you'd let him, knowing full well he's not marriage-minded, and you would have wasted all those months. It's so exhausting. So they put it into action. They realized, wow, this really works. Anyway, someone else came along, obviously completely different caliber of a person, was genuinely responsive when she said, I don't want to have sex. I want to get married. This is what I'm in it to get married. And that's the other thing that this course is going to teach. Stop being afraid to not say why you're there and what you're looking for. And I'm not saying on the first date,
sure,
and maybe not even the second, but within the first couple, by the third date, you should be very clear on where this person's been and where they're going. Because what are you doing if you're not having sex? Guess what you're doing?
Talking.
You're talking. You're communicating.
That was a guess.
Getting to know each other, right?
Intercourse, other kinds of intercourse.
I mean, imagine that. Like, you're actually bonding. Like, the whole purpose of getting to know somebody, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you don't have sex. You're talking for hours and hours and hours. That's what you should be doing. And if by date 3 of all those hours of talking, you don't know where the person is, then something's wrong, because you'll know. And so the whole point is to get on with it and quit dragging this whole dating thing out. And the reason why it's getting dragged out is because women sleep with them right away and they happily live with them without any commitment. You just remove those two things. And I'm not saying that's all the course is. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's Don't buy the course. I just told you what to do. It's all good.
Click 2 screens. Click, done. You're welcome. Check, please.
No, it's deeper than that. It gets into a lot of stuff about your mindset and where you are and what your upbringing was and what your thinking is about marriage and men and all that. And then there's the rules. There'll be a whole list of rules and what you're going to do on these 3 dates. But those, and the second one of those it doesn't even apply. They're not living with them because that wouldn't even happen within the first 3 dates. So, but the sex part it's non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable.
Well, I don't know that a man would move in with a woman he's not sleeping with, or vice versa. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
No,
like, why would you?
That wouldn't happen. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So like just taking out that sex, as a given thing changes everything, changes the whole game.
Because by the time you're actually, back in my day, it's not like premarital sex was still in place. It wasn't. But the idea that you would, if you were sleeping with someone, it was almost always someone you'd been with for months before you were ever doing that. And then you continued to be with them for a year. Like, it was a marriage minded, focused kind of relationship. Even if they didn't end up getting married for whatever reason, it was very monogamous and very serious and very loving and bonded by the time you were doing that. Does that make sense? That's what I mean. Even if you don't end up getting married. And that's not what's happening today.
Yeah, no, it's sex is just put on the table right away. It is the table, right?
It is the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes wonder if, there's a lot of discussion that I know of about not having sex until marriage, but we kind of live in a culture where it's like sexual compatibility is kind of expected. And so but I don't know, our parents did, or our grandparents didn't think about things like that. And so being out on the dating market, it's kind of like, is that, as you experience that, like, do people have that expectation? Like, well, we gotta know if we get along.
They do think that. That's a really interesting conversation. For the record, I'm not suggesting that you not have sex before you're married, just because you're not having sex on the first 3 dates. But just to be clear,
the 4th date is the wedding.
Well, no, I'm not saying that either. But I actually, in one of my books, I said, there was a chapter titled "Don't Have Sex on the First, Second, or 20th Date." But my obviously the purpose was not how many dates. I was trying to send a message there to what I just said before. The relationship, the bond, you're all in. You're all in. The love has been established. The bond is there. It's natural to have sex with somebody whom you love. That's very hard not to. Many people do it, and more power to you. That's great. But chances are, even back in the day, once you were all in and you're committed and monogamous, that's inevitable. But I do think that's an interesting point. So I don't know how many of our mothers and grandmothers were virgins necessarily before they got married. But if they did sleep with them, and the research shows this, they pretty much had only slept with the person they married prior to marriage.
Yes.
Okay, so they really weren't virgins on wedding night. I don't think, most of them. But anyway, I'm sure many were. But it is interesting to have that conversation about, do you have to have sex with a person and make sure you're compatible on that front? It doesn't come up very much because nobody does that anymore. Meaning doesn't not do it. So I just think it's really interesting because I think that you would know whether you're compatible sexually throughout the course of your relationship prior to marriage, even if you didn't actually have sex, if that makes sense. In other words, it's not like, you're either attracted to someone or you're not. There's not like, okay, I'm attracted to kissing you, but not that. It's one leads to another. It's not like you get halfway in and you're like, this isn't for me. I'm sure it happens. But I think sexual attraction is either there and automatic between two people, or it's not.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody that I, would start. I don't know. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Well, the question the question is not really the question. The question is more along the lines of like, at what stage, given that and I think it's important to take really strong stances against sex before not necessarily marriage, but let's put it there.
Before the
like
relationship.
Sex only in the context of being super bonded. How, and with the intention that you're only going to sleep with someone that you're going to marry.
Yeah.
How far into that process? I love what you said about were our grandmothers and great grandmothers virgins on wedding night. That's a really good question. I never actually thought about it. I just kind of assumed, but not necessarily, right? So like how far into the process to take that? How close to the actual wedding day? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is when can that happen? That's more the nature of the question, I think.
Yeah. And I think I feel like that will be more self-evident if we can accept that sex doesn't belong in a relationship prior to falling in love. Not falling in love. Prior to the established monogamous, committed, in love relationship. However you want to phrase it. If we accepted that sex doesn't come before that it comes after the I love you. First the I love you, then the sex. Not the sex in the hopes that you're going to hear an I love you. It's the reverse. If we just accepted that, I'd be happy. Because then I feel like when you end up with the person is kind of not that important.
Yes.
That's my take on it. Now, not everybody, religious people would not agree with that, obviously. That's my take on it.
Yes.
I'm happy just to have people not sleeping around, period. Just stop it. Just stop sleeping with people whom you do not have a potential future with. Like that alone would change the whole scene. Not to not worry about when you do it, Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, because a lot of churches, Christianity, a lot of the men in the sphere like talk about no more casual sex, no more dating apps. Like you've got other things you as a man should be putting your energy towards. And so the question comes up like, when is it actually okay to have sex? And so like, if you're going to be getting married, if you think you have a potential future with this person after having deep bonding, emotional clothes on experiences with them, that would be a safe, like emotionally safe, right? Go ahead.
To me, it's just the moment you hear I love you and you've returned it. In my day, was kind of a given what it was. Nobody really talked about it that way, but you knew sex was going to come after he said I love you and you said I love you too, or vice versa.
Can I recommend something?
Yeah.
There's a song. Do you know the artist Meatloaf? You probably have heard of it. You know the song Paradise by the Dashboard?
Paradise. I know what you're going to say. Oh my God. I love those lyrics. Oh my God. I am hysterical when those come on. I sing that at the top of my lungs and I know exactly the lyrics you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. I love it. I'll post it.
I won't give it away. You have to listen to the song in the show notes and really listen to the lyrics.
I can right now. Do you love me? Will you love me forever? Do you need me? Will you never leave me? Will you take me?
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Perfect example. Yes. I can't believe you thought of that. That's so great.
Oh, I love that song. I grew up with my mom loved Meatloaf, so I grew up with that song.
That's funny.
So it's like once I finally got that song, I was like, whoa.
And I'm so glad you did bring it up because I want everyone after they watch this to go listen to that song, really listen to it, and that whole message about that. She won't have sex with him until he commits and says, "I'm going to love you forever." That was the 1970s. Right?
Yeah, late 70s. Something. Yeah.
That was the norm. It was a given. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew that a woman did not sleep with you until you're going to commit and you're all in and you love her. Then she'll say, okay, but not a moment before then. And he keeps trying and trying. No. That was normal.
Yep.
I said we go back to that normal.
I agree. And then he says it. I won't give away the end of the song. The little spoiler-free end of the song. Okay. Well, I know that you're running short on time, but there was a question from someone on Instagram that I wanted to pass along to you, because I think it's a really good question. Do you have time for one more? Okay. Sacred Wild Man asks, what have you found men and women struggle to be honest with each other about in relationship? I thought that was a great question.
That is a great question. Oh my God. Except my gut response is too many things. Too many things. For women, some of them, their sexual history. Because I'll ask, and some people don't actually know the scope of that. And it seems to me that's just a logical thing you're talking about when you're getting to know each other, when you know about each other's pasts. So that's one. I feel like they're not saying, they're not telling who they really are, what they want and what they need, but it's more like they're playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling people what they want to hear. They're going through the motions, but they're not getting down and dirty with their communication.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no vulnerability. So if you're not vulnerable, then you're not honest, which goes to his question, which is, what are you not telling? You have to be vulnerable to be able to tell the truth about everything. Everything should be on the table. There shouldn't be any, I mean, you can always be your own person and keep your own, reasonable secrets or whatever. But I mean, like, all the obvious things should be out on the table, and they're not. It's not a norm to have it all out. So I don't know if that's specific enough to his question, but
yeah, they struggle to be honest with each other around the things that they need to be honest with each other.
Yeah,
about.
right. About what they're looking for, about what they want, about what they expect. And here's one about men. I don't think men are honest at all about what they want their family life to look like. So if they're dating someone, I don't think they have the courage, keep coming back to that word, to say, hey, I want to marry somebody who will stay home with the kids. Because I didn't have that, and I really wanted a mom at home, and here's what's missing in my life because of that, and I want my life to look like this. Not for 20 years, but like when the kids are little, I would love it if you'd be home with them and then go back to work after. Don't go back to work until they're in school. Like, just something as simple as a statement like that. They might want that, but they're not honest, because they'll just take whatever she wants to do, he has to go along with. That would be an example on his end. And then for her, I would say, her sexual history.
Do you think that men actually want to know that? Because a lot of men that I know, we talk about, is like, no, we don't actually want to know. We feel like there are some things we need to know, but like, that's not something you ever want. Do you really want to ask that?
No,
not today. Yeah.
No, but you don't want to find out later that she's still traumatized from it if it was really extensive.
Different. Okay. Yes.
And she's bringing that to the table without telling you. At the very least, all you have to do is just, if you're guilt-ridden about it or suffering, a man will want to take care of you for that and want to see you through that. But if you're putting up a force field and you're really feeling a lot of shame, it's going to come out in other ways. So you're better off telling him and like throwing yourself at his mercy, if you will. Like, I just fucked up so bad and I feel like crap about myself. I'm a horrible person or whatever the true feelings are. And he'll come right in there and scoop you up and tell you how great you are. That could bring you closer. But if you're not saying it, then you're bringing a lot of trauma in that he doesn't know about. And it's going to come out in the bedroom eventually anyway.
Yeah. See, that's really interesting, because we just talked about, postponing sleeping together and as close to marriage as possible, let's say, or at least in the context of commitment. And that could actually, we talked about sexual compatibility. That's something that a man might actually need to know. Like, as we're being intimate, is she going to go into some, legitimate, trauma experience and just shut down? Like, that would be something that'd be really important to know. How else if you're not sleeping together, how else is that going to come out except by in conversation? Right. Because you would learn that sleeping together, but potentially, right. But it's got to be spoken.
Right. Like with the one I was telling you about, with the date with the guy, she said she wasn't going to have sex with him. She made it clear that she's done that before and she wanted to do something different. And the first guy wasn't interested in getting married, so it didn't work. So he's like, see ya, whatever. And the second one was interested in getting married, and he was respecting and honoring the fact that she wanted to do things differently going forward. So he knew she'd been with people in the past, but with him, she was putting up the parameter.
And he didn't. Right. Men will or won't like that.
Yeah, but at the very least, you're honest, so you don't have. It's going to come out later anyway, in some way. If you don't, that's my theory about not being honest. I mean, I'm overly honest. I probably say too much. My husband and I are like, there are no secrets. There are plenty of other problems. We're normal like everybody else, but there's no secrets. That's for sure. And we like it that way, because there's never any, do I need to look at that? Do I need to wonder about that? Did she mean that? He mean that? None of that. And it's very liberating, very freeing to just put it out on the table from day one. Now, that's just our natures anyway as personalities, but I do think it's a good thing. And I think people struggle with it, but it comes out anyway. So you might as well just get it out before it comes out poorly.
Is that the direction that you coach people in, is to a relationship that, not that's like yours, because every relationship will be different, but that includes some more of that ongoing, upfront and ongoing honesty?
100%. 100%. In fact, I did something recently on socials about if you're scared about looking at your husband or wife's phone, something's wrong. Like I've never looked at my husband's phone. I mean, if I did, it's an accident sitting on the table. I know his code. He knows mine. I've never looked at his phone. He could be doing anything on there. I wouldn't know it, but he's not. So I'm not worried about it, and vice versa. But if you've got phone issues, then there's it's not about the phone. You've got a bigger problem. There's a trust issue there. And that's dishonesty, because if you're honest and forthright, there's no need to look at someone's phone. But you have to feel that first from the relationship so that it translates to not wanting to look at a phone. Since
you mentioned phones, I'm curious about the influence of social media on what you do. And obviously I imagine it doesn't make things easier. Social media probably only makes things harder, but like that's the thing. Like, what are you checking someone's phone for? Like what they're doing with social media, right?
It's so bad. I mean, I feel, not guilty is the wrong word, but bad in a way, because I didn't grow up with it. My relationship this is all new, really, right? In the last 5-10 years. And we're too old to get all involved in that kind of social media. So it's really more about our kids at this point. That's almost a whole episode, honestly, Will, because the social media has temptations, comparisons, but basically those two is the temptations that are available to you and the comparisons that are made. And both of those things dramatically harm relationships, needless to say. Dramatically. And then there's the addiction aspect of it, of scrolling forever instead of having a conversation with your spouse. There's that. So that's 3 right there. I mean, that's a whole conversation. It's bad. Yeah, it's bad.
All right. Sounds like we'll have to have a part 2 then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I really appreciate your generosity with your time and your expertise. And I just wish you the best of luck as you head into a little sabbatical to produce these courses. And I hope they bless so many people, because we need it. And in the meantime, where can people go to find out more about you?
I'm still available. I'm still around. So SuzanneVenker.com, SuzanneVenker. Everything's pretty much housed there. And I'm active on social media. I have a newsletter. So if you sign up at SuzanneVenker.com, you'll get mail from me every week that's keeping you up to date as well. So I'm not disappearing, just kind of pulling back a bit. And same with my podcast. And then I did my last one for the time being last week, but it'll come back. So,
and maybe those courses will be ready in about 6 months, something like that. Or
that's my hope. That's my hope.
Perfect. Well, maybe that'll be a good chance to talk about social media then.
Oh, sounds great. I'll love talking to you anytime, Will.